Abebe from Galaxy Trading. As always, Beimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
We're recording on Tuesday, um, September 30th, not our normal Wednesday, because I am in Singapore for Token 2049, and it is 11:30 p.m. for me, 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday for you, just to set the date and time for the audience so they understand when we were saying these things. But one thing that we just cannot get around, I know we've talked about, but gold just absolutely continuing to rip. I mean, the chart is like if you look at it, zoom it out, it's mind-blowing chart. It actually makes me wonder why it took so long for gold to rip this well, because it was stagnant for over a decade
Yeah.
or about a decade.
No, I mean, I think there's just a lot of forces coming to a head right now, right? There's the big push to kind of diversify away from, US assets, and that's a really hard thing to do. There's also just the fiscal policy element where, we're continuing to print more money. And then there's the Fed credibility component where, there's some folks that think that that the Fed is not appropriately tackling the inflation challenges, and then there's a little bit of doubt over kind of just general U.S. Supremacy, and that is kind of why you've seen gold do so well, and I think there's a big push from folks like the Chinese and the Chinese government to make it really like a cornerstone of financial markets. And what I mean by that is, the reason why US dollars have proliferated as much as they have and US debt has is, or part of the reason is because, uh, you know, treasury bonds are tantamount to cash, right? There is trillions of dollars in repo that will lend to you versus any treasury security at a 1% haircut to its value. So I've got $99 worth of a bond, or $100 worth of a bond. I can borrow $99 worth of cash at the front end interest rate. And so it's essentially equalized, treasuries to cash. And therefore, like, US treasuries have become like this kind of pristine collateral across our financial system. And I think there's a broader push to kind of make gold, part of that collateral HQLA, standard, not domestically here, but abroad at least. And so there's the fact that it's being pushed as the kind of basis for all of general collateral or a lot of general collateral, and then there's kind of the push to get away from U.S. assets, and so there's just so many different things that are coalescing to drive this price action, and it's really hard to ignore because when you add gold to a portfolio now, it's like it's risk reducing because it hasn't been that volatile, and it's adding out performance, and so it's there's just so many things lining up for it, and there's a lot of folks that are in crypto that wish that Bitcoin was having a kind of a similar moment, and that's totally fair, but at the end of the day, like there is some value to having like such a strong government backing to it, and gold being around for centuries. Uh, and it's something that an average person can buy without onboarding anywhere. I could go to my jeweler and pay in cash. I could go to Costco and swipe my credit card and buy it. Nobody knows that I own the gold, and so it is like literally universally accessible. Obviously, there's some drawbacks to it, but yeah, high level, I do think that there's some folks that are rethinking their Bitcoin thesis on the back of just how well gold has performed, and kind of their outlook on a go forward basis there, and I think those questions and concerns are warranted.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it makes sense, um, be, for there to be some consternation among Bitcoiners about seeing gold perform this way, because it is so obvious from the performance that something structurally is broken or people are afraid about. It's a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, you and I, now for years on this show. But Bitcoin has also often benefited from those fears. It just doesn't seem to be at the moment. Is it stagnation in the everybody already longed Bitcoin, and there's that next wall of onboarded people has yet to become believers? Like, is it purely an adoption and flows question, you think? Or, I mean, I can assure the audience and you, nothing has fundamentally changed about Bitcoin during this time.
Which
So,
is the beauty
like,
of it. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that it's just the adoption cycle ultimately. And I think just because of just how much got baked into BTC and broader crypto, especially after the election, and just how much good news has come out, like it's just going to struggle to move higher. And it will over time, because it should be a better play than gold, right? And so I think you just need some more time for the adoption story to kind of build out. But again, like gold went through periods where it did nothing, right? But the thesis was still super sound, right? And so you can have these periods in markets where not much happens, and maybe that's what Bitcoin is doing now.
So let's move on here too. I know I mentioned at the top we were talking about we're here talking on September 30th, which is a Tuesday. The US government is poised to close once again. I feel like when this first happened, not first, but this happened what, like 2010 or so, when there was that first US government credit rating decrease. That I was just a few years out of college then, and I remember that seeming like, oh my God, I've never even heard that this could happen. Or like maybe it happened once during the Clinton era, I don't recall. But like now this seems to happen all the time, right? And we're on the precipice of it apparently happening as soon as tonight as we record this. The odds on Polymarket that the government shuts down by October 1st, which is honestly, if you're listening to this pod, that will have already passed. I think we're going to release this on Thursday, October 2nd. They have it at 80%. Is the government going to shut down? And what I guess the we all know the effect, I think, now from watching this happen many times. First there's some essential employees who don't have to leave, and then they sort of like try to phase out like the least essential, and eventually it becomes a big deal if it lasts like weeks and weeks. But like, what is the impact on markets, you think, if any? Just like even in the short term, it shuts down. Maybe it's only shut for 3 days. Does that impact markets? How long does it have to be shut down to impact? Or yeah, what are your thoughts?
That's the $1 million question right now in the marketplace. And so far, even with the, poly market odds, north of 80%, it hasn't really impacted stocks that much. You're within spitting distance of all time highs. You're one candle away. Let's put it that way. Uh, and so it doesn't seem like the market cares right now. That doesn't mean that if we progress and it's starting to look worse, um, that it won't impact markets. But ultimately, like the U.S. government is one of the largest consumers of goods and services in the world. And so if they do pause, in a meaningful way in terms of timing wise, it should be a drag. Now, the beauty of it is like the employees, like once the government's back on, they get their pay. The services, the purchases, resume after the shutdown is over. So there isn't like a whole lot of concern about like long run kind of impact. But I do think it's kind of telling that there is a lot of dysfunction in the government, and that's not even with us. That's with a Senate and a Congress that is Republican, and an executive branch that's Republican. And so the fact that you're having this shutdown with one party in charge is kind of telling about the fragility of our system. And so it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. I don't have any like specific calls to make in terms of how long I think it's going to last, or the impact. But I don't. I'm pretty confident in the market is going to look through this pretty meaningfully.
All right. Well, it's going to be exciting to follow up with you next week to see if it's still shut down, if it even happened. And until then, have a good week, my friend, in New York. And I will see you next week. Everyone, Bimnet Abebe, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.